Hello everybody, now you get to just hear my nasally voice, but you don't have to look at my face, so that's somewhat of a win for you. I'll go a little faster here since you can pause things to write them down as we go along. But looking at the age of exploration here, so while we've got all this stuff going on with the Reformation of the church, meaning these reforms that are happening as the Protestant church starts, we've also got more things happening internationally as new advancements and some of these brave people start to explore the globe and make discoveries that they didn't know were there. And there's also kind of some common myths that we'll try to clear up as well. That didn't work. Oh no. Okay, there we go. This is a map from a guy named Ptolemy from way back in the around the year 200, and it is showing the globe as they knew it then. So what this shows, and what I wanted to stress, is that for years they already knew that the world was round. This is a reprint of it, so this was one that appeared during the Middle Ages, and it looks different from the world we know, but you can still get a sense of the fact that you've got Asia over here. This is showing some of the important trade routes, and you also can make out Europe here. You've got the boot of Italy that's kicking Sicily from way back in the Punic Wars when we talked about that. You've got Spain over here. You can see North Africa. You can see Saudi Arabia all in here. You've got the island of Britain. You've got Ireland over there as well. So they knew the world was round already, and so that's a common misperception that people have. And so Ptolemy in the 100s was able already to, or late 100s was already able to prove that they knew the world was round. What they didn't know is that North and South America existed. So they thought if you sailed this way, you would eventually get to Asia, and that shows how we have this idea of the Western world, and you had the Eastern world over in Asia. So they didn't know what was there. And these two countries, Spain and Portugal, are going to get an early jump on all of this exploration stuff. Portugal, this little sliver over here in orange, it's going to have a particular need to try to explore things more because it's at a disadvantage from these other countries in Europe. For one thing, if you want to take a land route, you're going to have to cross over the Pyrenees Mountains here, and then you'll have to get over the Alps here. And the reason all these people are trying to get to Asia is because of things like silk that are there, but especially you hear about spices. And spices aren't a huge deal to us in the United States. You've got a whole row of those McCormick spices when you go to buy low or your nearest grocery store, the Scary Food Lion on the bypass. But when we think of spices and how easily accessible they are, we're mainly thinking of things like salt. Spices don't grow well in Europe. It's a colder climate. You need a warmer climate to be able to grow these things. So just like we're addicted to our sweet tooth, if they have access in Europe to things like sugar or salt, well, they do grow salt along the sea here, but sugar, pepper especially, cinnamon, then those are all things that are desired back in Europe. So spices are worth a ton of money. And so the Portuguese would have to, if they go by land, cross over two major mountain chains. And by water, there's that narrow little strait known as the Strait of Gibraltar that's between Spain and North Africa. So that means even if they try to go by Spain, whoever controls this, whether it's Muslims or whether it's the Spanish crown, they can pretty easily block Portuguese access. And some of the Spanish are going to have some problems getting through there as well. So the Portuguese really want to learn how to sail on the Atlantic Ocean, or in the Atlantic Ocean. And one of the guys he's really rich, he wears a weird hat that looks like an upside down goose. I don't understand the hat. His name is Prince Henry the Navigator. They used to think he opened an official school for to train people to navigate well, but really he's just a rich guy with a lot of interest in getting the Portuguese. So if you're spelling Portuguese, it's P-O, makes sure if this works. Now I've got the microphone in my way, so I can't. So if you're from Portugal, or people from Portugal, or the Portuguese, so he has an interest in getting the Portuguese to, in sponsoring their trips. So he's a rich guy who's able to sponsor their trips on the Atlantic and to train them. He hires a bunch of cartographers who are people who make maps. If we go on there. Actually, I'm not even positive map maker is one word too. Map maker. Anyway, they make maps. People who make maps, you can just put it that way. So we've got the Portuguese who are going to start to sail. Prince Henry with his upside down hat. Darn it, what's going on here? Can't even change the slide. No, go away. Darn it, there we go. 5 hours later. Alright, so the Portuguese are here, and they're going to start sailing down the coast of Africa with money that's available to them, with better map makers and better some technology that they're going to develop. They'll sail down a little way down Portugal, and then they'll go back up. They'll see what they learn. They'll sail a little bit farther down. They discover the Canary Islands. It's difficult to sail below the equator because their compasses will start going crazy. But they're able to develop better technology. One of the sad chapters here is this is when African slavery becomes introduced to Europe as the Portuguese come down here. Sometimes it'll be for ransom that pirates from Africa would have kidnapped Portuguese sailors. Sometimes it's just an interesting trying to show off different cultures, but this is kind of the start of African slavery here from the Portuguese, as African tribes would sell rival Africans to the Portuguese as slaves. But one of the Portuguese advances are going to be these caravels, the ships that are designed to be better seafaring ships. A lot of the ships in the Mediterranean used oars that would come out of the side that required people to row. They were better for speed, but they didn't have the stability on the ocean. The caravels are going to, with this mast going up the center, you see the use of sails. They're going to be ships that are better to sail on the Atlantic. So now we've got the technology, we've got better maps, and we've got the ships that sail well on the ocean with the high waves, with the Atlantic winds. And all this technology is making it possible for people like Christopher Columbus to sail. Here's a painting, the only painting of Columbus that represents what he actually looked like. Columbus is from the Italian city of Genoa, Genoa. So he's not Spanish by birth, but Columbus is the one who approaches Ferdinand and Isabella, the king and queen. Oops, I put instead of and. We've already talked about them, that, well, I'll give you a moment to reflect, think, where did we see them? They are the parents of Catherine of Aragon, the first wife of Henry VIII, and that's whom he divorced and started the Anglican Church from there. So he tells them, look, I can sail. So now you've got the technology. He says, I can get a sail faster to Asia by sailing through the Atlantic, because again, they don't know North and South America are there. And now Ferdinand and Isabella have money, because another thing that we already talked about that happened in 1492 was the expulsion from the Reconquista. the Spanish Catholics had been fighting against Muslim. Remember, we watched the Seinfeld clip with George and the Bubble Boy, and there was a Trivial Pursuit question that was misspelled as the Moops. So we had the Moors there who were expelled. So now Spain has the money. They've got the desire to get to Asia faster because they have to go through a lot of mountains too. And Columbus will be paid to make his first voyage from Spain to what he thinks is Asia. So notice he never gets to what is the current United States, but he gets to North America. He travels. This is why if you get told to take a luxury cruise down here, it's known as the West Indies. This is why Native Americans are known as Indians, because here's India over here, and Columbus says, woohoo, I found a faster way to get to Asia. And he comes back and he tells everybody about this. He will make, I don't think I have a map of it. Nope, don't write that down yet. Went backwards. He will make 4 trips. I wanted to keep that up. Let's see if I can find a map here. 4 trips to, oops, I'll just look at this. What is this? Kids Britannica, because that's so fitting for us. It matches my maturity level. 4 trips to the New World. So notice he gets down by South America, but he never gets to what's now the United States. And he thinks he's hit this faster way to Asia, even though we know it's not Asia. And a guy named Amerigo Vespucci will say in the early 1500s, this isn't matching up to be Asia, and Amerigo will have America named for him. But the Spanish and the Portuguese, they're at a major advantage here because they're the only two who really have this technology and have the interest at the time in the resources to continue to explore. And what they do, they're given permission to kind of establish this line. The Treaty of Tordesillas establishes this line that basically kind of divides the world in half. They're given permission by the church to do this. And so the Spanish, they're going to be, they still think at this time, obviously, that they're in Asia, but the Spanish are going to be given access to this side. This is where the Spanish will come in, and later through Mexico and Florida, Cuba, all these countries in South America that speak Spanish. And the Portuguese will continue to travel around Africa. There's no Suez Canal yet, so they're going to continue to go around this way. And so this is what, notice the exception here. All these countries in South America, all the Spanish influenced Brazil, which is going to be in the news a lot in the next couple of years because they've scored, I think there had to have been some sort of corruption, but they've scored the 2 major sporting events in the world in 2016 and 2018. They'll have the 2016 Olympics, and Summer Olympics, and the 2018 World Cup, but Brazil speaks Portuguese, and that's because the Portuguese travel into that part of Brazil and have permission to do that from the Treaty of Tordesillas. One of the big things that comes from Columbus's exploration, once they figure out we're on a new continent, is what's known as this exchange of goods. And this is just a short little list of things that the Europeans bring over and that the Americans contribute, or the land in the Americas contributes to Europe. Wheat. We think about the center of the United States being the breadbasket of much of the world. That's not native to the United States. That's brought over from Europeans. Cattle and a lot of livestock brought over from Europe. That's one of the problems and criticisms of the Book of Mormon for Mormons, is that Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon Church, the Church of Latter-day Saints, said he translated some ancient texts about Jesus appearing to Native Americans long before the Columbian Exchange and seeing livestock there, but that didn't exist in the North American or South American continent before the Columbian Exchange and before Columbus and Europeans started coming over. Coffee. All of you coffee drinkers who drink that beverage that I think just tastes like dirty water. We think about, Costa Rican coffee, Colombian coffee. That's not native to the New World. It's native to Europe. Johnny Appleseed, those are native to Europe. From the Americas, we think about potatoes and the Irish potato famine. That was a meal that was cheap to grow and became a poor person's meal in Europe. Chocolate, Europeans got their addiction there. Tomatoes, tobacco, which Europeans are going to become obsessed with, and corn. All of those are native to the Americas, and are things that Europeans would benefit from, except for tobacco, which kills people and gives you bad teeth and a bad smell. Balboa, he's another Spanish explorer who's going to become the first to cross the Americas and land in the Pacific. So now we've got, once at this point in the early 1500s, right around the time where they're starting to say, okay, this is not a part of Asia, this has got to be a different continent, a new world. You hear that title, New World, that they didn't even know about in Europe. He's going to become the first to cross this narrow little area around Panama and set foot in the Pacific Ocean. So even more of a desire to conquer and see what else is beyond this. And then along comes Magellan. So you got all these, the foot insert things, chilling with the Magellans, Magellan with the Magellans, and my wife Helen Magellan, and that guy in the commercial. Ferdinand Magellan is from Portugal, but he's hired to sail for the Spanish. And Magellan is going to become famous for the first, or his crew will, the first circumnavigation of the world. That's recorded, that they will leave from Spain. And I think there are 5 ships. They will sail around South America. He has to endure a mutiny there as some of his crew go back, and then of course they're doesn't serve them well because they'll be executed for that. The rest of them are going to go on this area down here, the Strait of Magellan, named for him, and then they just take off into the Pacific. I mean, imagine that trek, because this is wide open territory, never knowing if you would see land again. You've got all these people. Just imagine the claustrophobia. Your drinking water is limited. That's why so many of these people drink rum and alcohol, because your water is going to go bad. The alcohol, they don't have an understanding of the germ theory of disease or bacteria, but the alcohol is killing off the bacteria, so they know that people aren't getting sick from that. So just imagine not being able to touch land, the smells, how bad that would have been, all this salted meat, no vegetables or fruit, which causes scurvy. So they go across the Pacific and they land over here. And notice that Magellan is going to be killed. They always carry gifts to give to local tribe leaders wherever they go. He's actually hit by a poison dart, which I didn't even know was real until Ferdinand Magellan. And then they will kill him after that. So he's sort of, I guess, paralyzed or stunned from the dart, and then they kill him. So his crew now, they've gone through all of this. They got to decide, do we keep going or do we turn back, knowing how arduous that journey would be? And they keep going. They go through Indonesia, Malaysia area, back down more open water. They get to the tip of South Africa, and they keep going up. And by now, you got to think they're hopeful. They kind of recognize where they are. And they get to Spain. Only 18 of them survive out of over 400 that had left to go with Magellan. So a very deadly trip, but proving that the world can be traversed and that you can travel all the way around. So a famous effort there. The French get involved. They're going to land up in Canada. Samuel de Champlain and Jacques Cartier, who will proclaim Canada as a French possession. That's why Canada is a bilingual country up here. So you got the Portuguese here, the Spanish quickly taking over, the Dutch getting involved where New York City, Philadelphia area are. New York was New Amsterdam first. And now the English want to get in the picture, and so they kind of say, okay, well, let's sort of go in the middle. We got the Spanish down here. We got the scary French up there. And these two guys are going to be influential there. Sir Humphrey Gilbert and Sir Walter Raleigh, with the oh-so-sexy collar going on there. These are half-brothers, and they are trying to persuade that long-reigning queen in the 1500s, late 1500s now. Who would that be? Think. Elizabeth I, daughter of Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII. They're trying to say, okay, everybody else is doing this, so we need to do this as well. Sir Humphrey Gilbert gets lost at sea and drowns, which would be an unfortunate fate. So now the pressure is on Sir Walter Raleigh, Raleigh, North Carolina, capital North Carolina, named for him, to start a colony, and they start Roanoke, which is off the outer banks of North Carolina. This is where, you girls who like sad love stories, this is where Nicholas Sparks lives now. Roanoke is going to be a huge failure. The colony will be established kind of on and off in 1585, 1586, 1587, and let me show their map here. Oh yeah, I forgot to show. That was the map that Columbus had here. You can just barely make out. What happens if I... Nope, that didn't work. Oh darn it. There we go. You can just barely make out Spain here, the Africa tribes here, Italy there. So that was the map of that Columbus had. Let's see old Google Maps here. So you see where Roanoke is. And what happens is it's established in 1587, and the captain of the crew at that time, a guy named John White, goes back to England to try to recruit more people and bring back more supplies. Well, what happened in 1588? Think. That required all these British ships. Think. The Spanish Armada, right, good job. And when the Armada hit in 1588, John White's boat was needed. Then they have kind of an ongoing conflict with the Spanish that's taking place. And he's not able to return until 1590. Well, when he gets back to Roanoke in 1590, everything's gone. The colonists are gone. The only hint is the word Croatoan written on a tree. Well, this is not working well. Oops. But now I'm determined to finish it. Carved into a tree just like that. And that was the name of a nearby Indian group, minus the O, so a Croatan Indian nation. And they don't know, was it somebody making graffiti just to mess with people for hundreds of years? Did they go settle with the Croatan nation? Which seems like the most likely explanation, because they were totally out of supplies. Go settle, and there were some reports later in the 1600s of Native Americans in kind of the North Carolina, Northern Virginia area with blue eyes. So they may have settled there. Were they kidnapped? Did they go inland? Did a hurricane hit? Still somewhat unsolved. Most likely is the explanation that they went to settle with the Indians, but the lost colony at Roanoke. So a huge failure, and Elizabeth says, okay, not on my watch. We're not doing this again, because that's not exactly a great PR move that you've just lost all of these colonists. There are over 100 of them who have disappeared. So the English don't get involved with any more colonial experiments until she dies, and James the First, who we've already talked about, take over, and then James will give permission to the Virginia Company to start Jamestown. So Jamestown, not too much farther upstream than where Roanoke was. Jamestown will barely survive problems with natives on and off, problems with cannibalism, that they're that desperate for food at a time, problems with division of labor, so it will barely survive, but that becomes the longest enduring English settlement in what's now the United States. The Spanish and St. Augustine have been around much longer, but Jamestown just barely makes it. So that's kind of our brief synopsis of how these exploratory trips are going on. I hope this thing is still recording. Doesn't look like it is. Is it still recording? Have I been talking to myself for the last 20 or 30 minutes? Maybe I have. Maybe I have. Maybe I haven't. Okay, now I'm talking. I have been talking to myself then. I didn't know I was talking to you. So, we'll end it there. Bye.